Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting of Tuesday, November 4th, 2025 to order. If you will stand with me, the Mayor's going to lead us in a prayer and the pledge.
Please bow with me. Lord, thank you once again for the wonderful city that we live in, placing us here just to all gather together. We ask that you watch over council and help them make sound and right decisions. We ask that you watch over our citizens and our northern friends that are on their way down. We hope they have safe travels and make it here and spend their money. Excuse me, sorry. We also ask you that you lay your protective hands over our first responders and guide them and help them keep our city safe. We ask that all we do in your name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can you call the roll, please?
Shu.
Here.
Bishop.
Here.
Carla.
Here.
Avery.
Here.
Kobushek.
Here.
Stewart.
Here. All right, if there's anyone in the audience who has something they'd like to speak about tonight that is not an agenda item, if you could fill out one of these public comment forms and give it to Ms. Renee up here, we'll get to public comment later in the meeting. Mayor's report.
Just a few things. Halloween, I missed it, but I heard it was great. Saw a bunch of pictures. Congratulations to Neil for you and the chamber putting that on. They do have on November 15th, before our next meeting is the Gobble Wobble coming up. So another event downtown. And if you see, our Christmas lights are starting to go up already on the circle. So thanks to the Spiegel and Jeremy for doing what they're doing. It's going to be pretty awesome this year. I think Jeremy's got a lot of good things to do. Let's see. We got a little bit trumped on an item that we had, but this is Public Information Officer Week. The county read a proclamation and for all the PIOs in the county, and Hannah was honored at that. So we have our own proclamation. So Hannah, would you come up here, please? For those of you that don't know Hannah Tucker, she is our Public Information Officer. Here's a proclamation. Whereas the city of Sebring recognizes the vital role of public communication, fostering transparency, trust, and engagement between local government and the community. And whereas Hannah Tucker has served the city of Sebring with exceptional professional and dedication as a public information officer, ensuring residents are informed, prepared, and connected. And whereas through her leadership in media relations, public outreach, and crisis communication, Hannah has elevated the city's presence and credibility across multiple platforms, strengthening the relationship between the city of Sebring and the citizens it serves. Whereas Hannah's creativity, responsiveness, and commitment to accuracy have been instrumental in delivering timely updates, promoting community events, and highlighting the achievements of the Sebring's departments and employees. And whereas her service reflects a higher standard of public communication, embodies the spirit of teamwork, innovation, and civic pride that define the city of Sebring. And whereas the city council and residents of Sebring wish to express their gratitude and appreciation for her outstanding contributions and continued dedication. Now therefore be it proclaimed by John Shute, Mayor of the city of Sebring, Pinellas County, Florida, do hereby proclaim November 24, 2025 shall be known in all of Pinellas County as That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Council members, comments? Mr. Carlisle?
No report.
Okay. Ms. Kobushek?
No.
Mr. Bishop?
I don't have anything to report, but I do have an idea. I'd like to bounce off everybody and see what everybody else's temperature would be. As our town is growing, we see a new commercial building go up, and undoubtedly it's a new discount retail store with a yellow sign, and we always get the comment, great, that's just what we need. So, or a car wash, or storage warehouse or whatever it is. And I want to see what everybody's feeling was about writing a new ordinance that may or may not be able to regulate the number of feet, distance, miles, whatever, in between these businesses that eat up all of our prime real estate. And in my opinion, don't contribute a whole lot to the community. We have similar ordinances that regulate things like group homes, and I'm sure Bob could give us some other examples, but it wouldn't be something unprecedented. Just explore the option.
Would we be allowed to do that if it's more restrictive?
It's certainly something that we can look into. I have not seen that done, but it doesn't mean we can't do it. But I think the thought was if there wasn't an appetite to have such an ordinance, then we wouldn't go through the effort, expense of researching it.
I guess I'm generally of the opinion to let the free market do its thing on that. I mean, I don't.
Then we wouldn't have zoning and permitting and
Sure. I don't know. I probably wouldn't be super in favor of it, but I'm curious as what the rest of council thinks.
They do it with billboards. You can only have a billboard at so many feet of each other, so.
mhm.
I understand the free market thing, but I kind of agree with you. We're getting a lot of storage units and, other places you're talking about.
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind looking into it.
Okay.
I guess Bobby would have to do that. I think you have somebody that wants to talk in the audience.
Oh. Thought her.
Oh.
At least he has a fresh haircut.
Well, I
Love it.
noticed that when you walked
Nobody
in.
recognized incognito. I'll let it grow back out and confuse you again later. Jeff Carlson, for the record, I think I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with the idea of restricting those, but I love hearing conversations about comp plan and long-term planning.
Right.
This is exactly the kind of conversation that should have built around comp plan,
Mhm.
especially when we do so many comp plan amendments that I think aren't compatible with the comp plan. So if y'all are really thinking about doing something like this, next time you look at that as a review, think about the comp plan.
Thank you.
Good point.
Yeah.
I'd be in favor of looking into it. I just want to know what the feasibility too would be with the more or less restrictive with everything else that we've been looking at. So I think it's a good point.
So we
Yeah.
have a consensus.
I would just need more information. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
further.
Okay.
That's all. I
Sorry.
just wanted to see if there's any interest before
Okay. All right. Good deal.
I throw my idea out.
You move over, Marshall? Yes, sir. Okay. All
All right. That's
Anything
it.
else? All right.
Mayor brought it up too, but it's nice to see the Christmas on the circle get lit up or getting in the process. I just want to point out and just want to say thanks to Public Works too. I don't know if anybody's noticed is the new mulch around downtown. I think one of the best things about downtown is you don't really notice a problem until there is one, and I haven't seen any problems. So I think just that alone is worth recognizing and say thank you to Public Works for doing an outstanding job. New playground too at down at the pier, down at Rotary Park too. So just want to say thank you for the crew that did that. Some of the guys on Public Works who were contributing to the mulch and the upgrades and the improvements and maintenance. I'm sorry if I don't have anybody, but Sean and Caleb, Miguel, Mark, Tony, and Daniel, you guys are doing a killer job. I'm very thankful for what they're doing. So just want to point them out and give them credit where credit's due.
Only thing I want to say is, again, a shout out to the chamber and everybody who participated in the Halloween event Friday. I was down there with my son, his first Halloween, trick or treated, and had a blast. There were an unbelievable number of people down there. Fire department and police department handed out candy, which he thought was great. He got to sit in a fire truck. It was amazing. And then a shout out to Public Works for cleaning it all up so fast for Art Fest the very next day. I imagine the number of candy wrappers was monumental. So it was a great event, and thank you to all who participated. We're going to move on now to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments from council on the consent agenda? Okay, anything from the audience on the consent agenda? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda with the item change, the amendment on summary, the summary amendment on 8F, the attachment.
Oh,
It's just a
okay.
budget.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Ogletree,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes. All right, there is no old business. We're going to move on to new business. Item number 10A, 75th anniversary of the first Sebring race. Mr. Ford Haycock.
Moving right along, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
Saw myself way down here at the bottom. But thank you very much for allowing us to speak to you tonight. I wrote some remarks, but I think I'm just going to talk from my heart. I'm a Sebring native. My family's been here since the first migration. Our family's been involved in the Sebring race. But more importantly, a lot of people in town have been part of this race over the years. I'm very pleased to bring my guest Eldridge Pollard, who with Chief Laguerre Smoke, he and Smoke were the fire team for the very first Sebring race in 1950. And Eldridge, stand up and take a bow. He's 96 years old. Eldridge and Smoke will be the grand marshals for the event that we're planning for New Year's Eve of this coming December. I've gotten ahead of myself. I was going to introduce Eldridge last, but I looked at him sitting over there, so I better get him before it's too late. In 1950, on New Year's Eve, Sebring hosted its first automobile race. And those of you that don't know it, in the world of motorsports, that was a historic occasion. That was the first international sports car race for endurance racing in North America. And it positioned Sebring to be second only to the 24 Hours of Le Mans in France in significance. And in the 1953 race here for the 12 hours, it was the very first race of the World Sports Car Championship. Sebring went on to host the first U.S. Grand Prix for Formula One cars here in 1959. But it's that race in 1950 that we're focusing on December 31st of this year, the 75th anniversary of that very first race. We hope to recognize what we call the legacy families, the families that have stories to tell and memorabilia to share going back to the early years of Sebring. We'll have a tent at Circle Park for the legacy members to share their stories and their information about the race. We'll have a small parade with a fire truck with our grand marshals riding along. We'll have the winning car from the 1950 race will be here, following the fire truck in a short parade around the circle, we hope. We're still trying to figure out the logistics of that. We'll have a car show. Rich Tillotson over in the corner is chairing our car show. We'll have vendors. John Graham's handling our vendors. We're going to have a children's car race. J.C. Shoup is sharing that with the help of Hannah. Where are you, Hannah? Thank you so much. We've got a lot of activities for families on that day. It should be exciting. But it's really an opportunity for Sebring to celebrate a moment in town, in time, when Sebring became internationally famous. There was a time in the 50s and 60s when Sebring attracted the top racing teams and drivers from all over the world. And they were followed by celebrities, politicians, royalty, astronauts. Anybody who was anybody wanted to come to Sebring and be a part of this event. And today, times have changed, and a lot of those glory years, as we call them, have passed. And so a lot of people in town today don't relate to what happened here 75 years ago. But it put Sebring on the map, and over the years, it's had a tremendous impact on our economy. But more importantly, I like to say Sebring is a small town with a great big reputation. We have a reputation that's international. You go to Europe, you go to Asia, you're wearing a Sebring hat, people recognize you, they pat you on the back, they want to say hello, they want to talk. But I've experienced that. I know firsthand what I'm talking about. And I invite all of you to come downtown on December 31st, 1 to 6, and join us for the 75th anniversary of the very first Sebring race. I've got a couple of handouts. If anybody in the audience would care for one, I've given each of you a copy of the handout with the lapel pin. That's our little 75th anniversary lapel pin. And for a quarter, I'll give you one. But, they've got 75 on it. It's a way to start the story, to tell the story. 75 years of automobile racing in Sebring. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope to see you on New Year's Eve. And I want to thank you so much for the cooperation of the city. Every department that has met with us on this event has been wholeheartedly on board and very supportive. Scott, Mayor, all of you, I want to thank you for your support.
Thank you. Forward.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from council on this item? Anything from the audience?
This is actually the 75th running of the 12 Hours of Sebrings in 2027. So there'll be another celebration for the 12-hour race. But this is really the inaugural race that started racing, and Ford and his family were here, and Anna Tucker's part of the Sebring clan. So so there's some pretty much with her mother over there. But there's some pretty good depth, and Eldridge Pollard, he's, like he said, it wasn't iced tea when they were drinking there, was it, Eldridge? So it's got quite a few stories you can tell about that event, but it's going to be a really neat event, and it's New Year's Eve is on a Wednesday, I believe. It'll be during the day, and then there'll be fireworks at night. So it's going to be a good celebration, something we really need to engage in. So.
Ford's right about when I was in Germany, Europe, here in Florida, somebody say, "Where are you from?" You say Sebring. I say, "Where's that?" In Germany, somebody say, "Where are you from?" I say Sebring. "Oh, you're from Sebring?" You know, it is kind of strange that far away they knew about Sebring, but a lot of people, even in our own state, don't know. It's weird, but it's kind of a fun thing. I'll make a motion. We approve the event as presented, including a waiver of fees, conditioned upon providing a certificate of liability insurance in the amount due of $1 million, and listing Sebring as an additional insurer at least 10 days prior to the event.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Renee, can you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Ogleshatz.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on now to item number 10B, an update of the Boys and Girls Club. Ms. Rearick.
Good evening, honorable members of the City Council, Mayor Shoup, wonderful guest. My name is Janice Rearick. I'm Chief Executive Officer of the Boys and Girls Club of Highlands County. On behalf of the club, I extend our heartfelt thanks for your continued support of our Sebring Club. Established in 1997, the Boys and Girls Club in Sebring is our flagship club here in Highlands County. Your partnership has been instrumental in helping us provide safe, nurturing, and empowering environments for our youth. The club takes very seriously the challenge and the charge that the city gave to us to be stewards of that fine recreation building on East Center Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. It is our flagship location, and we're very, very proud to be able to have that and grateful for the support from the City Council. I've provided some notes ahead of time for each one of you. So if you'll allow me just to kind of go through some bullet points, there's not a quiz at the end. So you can have a chance to just see a little bit of what's been going on in the club for this past year. This is a great opportunity for me to be able to stop in once a year and just give you a little update, let you know that the state of the club is good. We have 66 kids registered here in our Sebring location. Most of them are kindergarten through 5th graders, and they're having a blast. They really are. Things are going well. We are well supported with grants and other funding, in addition to that which comes from the city of Sebring. If you'll take a look at your notes, as you can see, we continue to maintain 3 areas of focus every day after school and during the summer. Academics, good character and citizenship, which is our enrichment program, and healthy lifestyles. When we talk about enrichment, it's a very broad category. It's everything from arts and crafts to say no to drugs. But that allows us to be able to inculcate good character and citizenship characteristics with our kids. One thing that I usually ask you about when I come along is to talk about things that are going well. Some of the great things that we have that we can celebrate this year. We have a new walkway, thanks to the city of Sebring. The entryway is much safer, and the folks from the construction department of the city did a great job. If you'll recall, prior to that, it was some wobbly little walkway stones, and it's now a beautiful walkway that's ramped up and it goes into the building, so it's not only safe for walking in, but it provides handicap access as well. Signs, everywhere signs. There was a song about that many, many years ago. We have a wonderful new boulder sign that we've installed at the corner of East Center Street and Martin Luther King. The boulder sign design is one that we hope will also impart to the kids that as a rock, we are here to stay, and we are a place where the kids can know that they are always safe to be able to come to the club, that it is a place they can rely on. The other signs we've got a new one on East Center Street. You'll see some pictures in the packet, perhaps, of that so you can see it. And right now, if you drive along Sebring Parkway, look on up to that chain link fence, and we're putting a new sign there right inside of it. They call that Putin Cups. And I know you've seen them in many different locations. Lots of schools have them. But it's time for us to be able to have people, when they're sitting at that traffic light on Sebring Parkway, to look up there and know exactly what's up that hill. That beautiful building is a Boys and Girls Club. In the intervening months, since I've spoken to you before, we've had a major refurbishing of the floors. They're as old as the building, but we're keeping that linoleum looking shiny, doing the best that we very, very can. As we look forward, there are certain areas of improvements, and I always want to update the council. Any help that you can give us to be able to make sure that we maintain the building in its absolute tip-top shape as much as possible. Over years, we've had assistance from United Way for painting. We've installed a new kitchen. We've been able to put in study countertops in the teen room. So there's a number of really good projects that have advanced us. But we're also now looking at the outside of the building. And if you drive by, you may notice that our playground right now is taped off. We've gotten to the point where its age is catching up to it. It just can't seem to handle the energy that the little kids have anymore. So we're looking at replacing the play gym. That's in the front yard. In the backyard, the tennis and basketball courts sadly have seen better days. There's some photographs that I made sure that you would have so that it's a little bit of a show and tell. Kind of hard to describe something that's falling apart without a little picture to show you. But the tennis courts no longer have quite that shiny green look anymore. If you look closely, like an archaeologist studying ancient history, you would know that it was a tennis court at one time. But it's hard to be able to see it right now. The basketball court adjacent to it has a little bit of erosion in the back corner. In fact, so much so that some of my littlest ones sit on the edge with their feet dangling off the side as they kick their way into the sand. So it's a little bit of a work that we need to be able to do that. It's actually going to probably take a lot of work, to be honest. But I'm looking at advising the city as we go down the way, putting a little bit of this into your thought process, if you would, so that we can make sure that we're able to maintain the facility in every possible way to make it absolutely the best place for our kids to be. I know that we're looking today at potentially talking about considerations for recreational facilities upgrades, and I would ask that perhaps that might be a consideration down the line as you're doing those upgrades to think about the Boys and Girls Club as well. As we look to the future, the club, as I said, is doing very well right now. Very grateful for the wonderful support that comes from the city of Sebring. There's so much that we would not be able to do without your kind assistance, without your support, and just knowing that we have the voice and the vote and the support of the city council behind us means everything. We do a program at the Boys and Girls Club where the kids have a chance to walk down to our city center where they visit. We call that History and Culture Day. And it's important because we want the kids who live in Sebring to understand what a great town they live in. And I want them to be able to appreciate so much of that. One of the events that we do is to take the kids out to the Sebring Regional Airport. There's an Aviation Discovery Day every February that the 99s and the women aviators and the Sebring Regional Airport participates in. Another opportunity for the kids to understand exactly what the great resources they have here in town. That's my update for you. As I said, many of the notes are already in your packet. You will see photographs there of the projects that I'm speaking about, the play gym upgrade, the, I've got notes on this too, the play gym upgrade, which is primarily a safety enhancement for us, as well as the background and the blacktop area. We've got the new concrete walkway and much of the and the bathrooms as well. If you will see that they're functional, but they might be in need of a little bit of an upgrade. It's probably time. What I've given you in the packet is a photograph of what we have now, but also a concept of some new ways that different organizations are starting to revamp their facilities. And so I wanted to share that with you just as an idea. Sometimes it's nice to say, what could we possibly be? And those are some photographs that you can be able to take a look at for that. We are also thankful to the City Council for our help with City Manager Netlick. We've upgraded our lighting. Lawn maintenance, it continues to keep the place looking very nice. And we also are staying up and with all of our utilities that we are able to grant to us with our wonderful support grant. In the past, I've spoken to you about an exterior pavilion or a backyard porch that stays on the list of a request for assistance as time goes on. It's still hot as can be back there with that west-facing front that looks out over the Sebring Middle School. So that would be something else that we would like some help with, as well as garden fencing to be able to protect the community garden that we've started. Sounds like a lot of a wish list, but I want to make sure that the council understands that we're very, very grateful. And I'm also very grateful that I've got the support of the neighborhood. The people that surround the Boys and Girls Club are wonderful supporters, backing us up in everything we do, keeping that wonderful protective bubble around the club to make sure that the kids are always safe, they're encouraged to be there, and that it supports the mission of the city as well as the Boys and Girls Club. So I appreciate it very much. I'm very grateful. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. Do you have ideas on budget for any of these projects that you're looking to do?
We're doing a number of different thought folders and looking into it. The blacktop area can be as simple as a resurfacing or it's a rebuild. So there's a wide range.
Sure.
I've spoken to a company that does both. The range for that goes anywhere from $5,000 to maybe $20,000. It's not a small endeavor, but it's something that we probably need to take a look at doing. It's not just so much that the kids are sitting there, you know, with their legs dangling down off the end of it as the sand wears away underneath. It's some of the ones who decide it's fun to run and jump and dive into the sand. So we do have to consider a lot of safety issues with the kids on that. Playgrounds, we've kept this one going as long as we can. I understand that there could be a lot of discounts even available through recreation supply companies, and we will be able to investigate into the pricing for that as well.
Okay. And are these listed in the packet that you gave us in order of importance to you? Or,
Yes.
okay. All right.
Yes, a couple years ago, with the what I call the country porch was of a high priority, but that's before the blacktop started falling apart. So we reprioritized that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council?
Thank you for the update.
Thank you so much.
Would it be possible to invite
Yes,
Pastor Shannon?
absolutely. Yes, sir. Come on up.
I just wanna thank you for coming up here and all the information. As you know, my name is Billy Shannon, the founder and president of HEP Organization. And I really like the approach and that you went about giving the information, and I'm really thankful for you guys helping her at the location. But can I take the Band-Aid off and then be real about this situation? Can I take it off? You guys don't look at me a little terrible. I want to take the Band-Aids off this situation. That Boys and Girls Club been like that for years. I've been passing by there for quite some time. And I decided to come in and get acquainted with her, get acquainted with some people that seems to go there a lot more than I do, and have situations and circumstances that they speak about on the needs. But what I see right now as a need and priority as a need as our kids get ready tomorrow afternoon to go in that building is actually, I would have a yellow tape around the whole thing. It's the information that she gave is great. Everything that you guys have did is awesome. But right now, it's not only security issues, it's some safety issues that is a hazard, a very hazard. She spoke about the basketball court and the tennis court. The pictures don't serve the purpose. If you can actually see, come and see, you guys will have any of your kids, any relatives, or anything just to walk on the surface of that. And they still have kids coming in the afternoon, possibly with one employee, maybe two, I guess, that's out there trying to look at about 30-some kids in the area, in which at any time it could be some type of condition that can be major to these kids' life. Trip, fall. I think that's the first priority. If we can come together, I want to come together with her, with my HEP organization. I normally go out my pocket, and thanks God to David Laddill. I love you so much. Thank God to David Laddill and City Council for helping me on my ideals in Washington Heights area. But if we take a Band-Aid off this and we take a look at the whole situation, you can go from the tracks, and you can go anywhere in the other locations and look at the recreation areas, and then you'll come back over in this area, you'll see it look like it's a third world country. Not only in the recreation area, I don't want to talk about bringing anything else, not only in the Boys and Girls Club, but the whole area of Washington Heights. I sort of gave it a name. It's the Washington Heights Correction Facility. Seriously, because that's what it is. It's facilitating in 4 areas of convicts, no place for the young kids to wake up in the morning, walking to school, coming back from school, and going to a facility like this. Thank God for the facility. And the other facilities that we have, like the Mary Tony, I guess the playgrounds, and the ones up by the school board, they're pretty decent. But right now, I wish I can get all of you guys. I spoke to you one time earlier, Roland. I think what you guys have to do, actually, instead of talking to some people who you think they got the vital ideals and experiences about Washington Heights area, I think you guys got to get down and do some more homework. Part of the homework is that it's going to take you guys. If I can get you guys to come over one lunch, and I can walk you from Center Street, and we can start to Lemon Avenue, and I can walk you just one block, and you guys will want nobody in your family to live in that area. You wouldn't even trust your kids or your grandkids to be in that area. It's unfitting. The situation is terrible. And I spoke to a lot of people, and I'm not political, and I can tell you I'm independent, and I'm about God. That's why I'm independent. I spoke to a lot of people, and I take my hat off to the president. I wish we can get the National Guard to come over in that area for 6 months. Seriously.
So, Mr. Shannon, I hear what you're saying.
Yes. But
Right
to get
now,
back to the point, I know it. But to
we're
get
talking
back
about
to
the
the
Boys
point,
and
I know
Girls
you
Club.
got time.
Yes, sir.
This might be my last time where I get a chance to I can speak this way. But actually, she gave you all the information. But if you guys think about anything, please think about getting the court, both of those courts, done. And actually, you can do it with $15,000. It don't have to be, I'm talking about for each court. All depends on what grade and how far you want to go. But the courts is important because those kids go out every day still playing on those courts. And it's a habit waiting to happen. Okay, I'm sorry for coming up and bringing all this in, but it was just in my heart. And I thank you guys, and I appreciate you guys very much, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment on this agenda item? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. All right, we've got a little bit of a reshuffling on the next one. We're going to move items D and E up and then circle back to item C. So we're going to go to item number 10D next. And before you start speaking, Mr. Liddell, I'm going to open this up. This is a public hearing. Come on.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm David Liddell, the Chair of the Sebring CRA. We're here tonight to request disposition of two properties that the CRA owns. One is the Nancessory property that's located up over on North Ridgewood Drive. The other is the old, most recently antique building, otherwise known as Bank of America or Barnett Bank, on South Ridgewood Drive. The CRA went through a disposition process where we advertised and received proposals, several for both of those properties. We formed a selection committee who went through, reviewed, held interviews, and narrowed it down to two candidates. One for the Ancestry property, which is Ken LeBlanc. The second is Marty Wall with Marmor Construction for the South Ridgewood property. Ken LeBlanc is the one who is responsible for the Lake Placid Journal Plaza, and he has a similar project in mind for up there. It will be unique to Sebring. It will not be a mirror image, but it will offer retail and hospitality, food, beverages, restaurant type environment. He describes it as a destination location that will complement the circle. The Marmor Construction property would be the Marmor Construction's administrative offices on the second floor, and the first floor would house the Sebring Hall of Fame Museum and Sebring Historical Society. Marty Wall has described his project as being a tool for him to use as recruitment for not only new business, but also for employees. And it would be a showpiece into the gateway of the downtown area. So we are, at this point in our disposition process, coming to you all for the approval to dispose of the property for less than fair market value. And then we will move on forward with talking with them and negotiating what assistance, if any, they might need from the CRA and what that will look like. I have met with Mr. Wall one time, and I will meet with Mr. LeBlanc for the first time tomorrow. So we're very early in those stages.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, so we're gonna open it up to public comments and questions first. Now, this item 10D is specifically for 139 North Ridgewood Drive, the previous Nancesway Hotel property. Are there any questions or comments from the public on this item? All right, seeing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing and now open it up for questions or comments from council. I just have one question. I know we've spoken before. I know you don't have the full agreement in here. You have an idea of the financial incentive that the CRA is gonna do. Is that accurate?
So I know that we've got two properties going on.
So we'll
So-
just talk about the LeBlanc one first.
So just for background purposes, on Thursday, I was on a conference call with myself, Marty Wall, the CRA attorney, and Marty's attorney. And in that discussion, it was brought up that the incentive programs that we're allowed to offer have to be specific to items that are approved CRA projects or expenses, excuse me, rather. That has, and it's because both of these properties, we've got one other property that we disposed of and transferred ownership of, but that was very cut and dry. There was nothing that went along. It was a disposition and that was it. These two properties, since we don't own them, it's a little more complicated as to what we can contribute and what we can't. So to answer your question about the Nancesway property, the dollar number we were talking about was approximately $300,000. I want to caveat that by saying I don't know if we can pay $300,000 for the expenses that he will be incurring for the project. So that is still up in the air, but that was the initial ask.
Okay.
So I would say that's probably your top number, and we have to see if there are allowable expenses that will fit into that number, and that could change whether or not this project will even work.
Okay. All right. I don't think I have any other questions. I think this one is a great idea, and I would be excited to see it. Anything else from council? All right.
Well, and I do have one thing too. And Davey and I talked too. I'm unbelievably excited about this project. I can't wait for Ken to do this. I'm in Lake Placid all the time, enjoying that too. The only concern I have, and maybe I'm the only one with this concern, I feel like it might be a little bit premature personally on the disposition right now, approving it now with some of the questions unanswered right now. I understand that every deal that the CRA has done in the past has been a little bit different from one another, but I would personally just feel good about, or a lot better about tabling it until we have more clarity on it, what those exact numbers are. And I think that we could wait a little bit longer to get more clarity on what those are. This is the same for 139 and the Bank of America building too. That's my only concern. I want to know exactly what we're getting into for the CRA and the city side of things.
Well, for clarity, the city is only getting into the disposition.
Correct, but in the past we have approved different things based on different agreements too. Like Macaritos, it was the council was approving the lease agreement and the disposition too.
Well, no, technically you were approving the disposition. The lease agreement was between the CRA and the tenant.
He is proposing holding off approving on the disposition until there's greater clarity on the overall scope of the project.
Understand?
So again, and then this has nothing to do with Ken, with the project. Again, can't wait. I'm very excited for this. I want to see this happen, and I appreciate everything that the CRA is doing, what you guys have been doing. I just want to make sure that we're doing all of our due diligence here, not just disposing of the property, but knowing what the end goal is too. So we're not getting into any unforeseen circumstances that we already disposed of it and we don't have a say.
Well, to that regard, every one of our dispositions, I would say, I think that's an accurate statement, had the incentive agreement, if you will, has changed after council has approved the disposition. Because the disposition only lies with y'all, the incentive lies with the CRA. So we could give that information, but the problem is it could change. And it won't come back to you and be discussed in another council meeting.
And I've discussed this too, and I think that incentive too. I mean, it could be a massive amount. It could be capped at 300,000 based on what you need, what you can and can't do. With bigger projects, it's gonna be a bigger price tag too.
Correct.
So, and I understand that too, and I don't want to necessarily stop the process or the negotiations, but I feel like whenever we just say we're disposing of it right now and not having any more say on that too, ultimately council, the way I look at it too, and you all might think different, but if we're approving the disposition of a property, we're approving the project as a whole with the incentive program too. I would just feel better about knowing what the incentive is before we dispose of the property.
So I certainly understand your thoughts, and in general, I agree, except that what David just said is accurate. You know, I think we've approved of properties in the past with a set incentive package, and it changes, and it's because it doesn't have to come back to
The
us at that
elevator is
point.
a prime example.
Right, elevator, roofs, additional work, and none of that requires our approval or did. Extensions to the timelines, all of those things can and are done outside of our purview. So I get what you're saying there, and I would agree if it was binding, but because it's not, I'm I guess personally comfortable moving forward without them. That would just be my opinion, because we could. He could come back with agreement that says no incentive, it's got to be done in 2 years, and at their very next meeting, they can change it. And I think if we're voting for CRA members that we trust and we like the framework of the idea, I'm personally comfortable moving forward. I would be interested in the rest of your thoughts.
I'm on board with you, Josh.
Okay.
Bernard, you're shaking your head. Is that
I agree with you. I would like to know more about the amount of money. You said maybe 300,000, maybe more. It's kind of, and I realize we're just a disposition, but it sounds like a open window.
Dave?
It's
How
an
long?
open window up to the board's approval.
Do you know how long would this be the next CRA meeting that you would have a better idea of what the incentive agreement would be, even as a baseline, that we know it may or may not go over a certain cap?
No, I mean, what the part of the process we're in right now is to move forward with that negotiation, and that can take, that takes as long as it takes. I mean, there's attorneys that are involved. We try to start with the framework, between us and the, planned use person, but then there's an agreement and it goes back and forth, and that's, kind of where we're at. I mean, things get argued over whether sometimes it's money, usually not. Most of the times it's just terms of the agreement and what the milestones are, how the language in the contract reads, that kind of thing. Whether they have to have the property sooner rather than later because they need to encumber it. Could be any number of things. Given the fact that our first formal meeting is going to be with Ken tomorrow, I would say this probably won't get ready for our board until January at the earliest. Marty Walls, I mean, I don't know if we'll be ready by December or not.
Just clarify something for me, David. This is approving the disposition of the property, but you're not transferring, the property until you have an agreement, correct?
Correct.
So this is not saying tomorrow you dispose of the property,
Correct.
and
We
then
don't
you
have to-
hope Ken or Marty comes in and says this is what we want. So you'll pretty much have a plan in place, and if the plan doesn't fit what the board wants, then you're not going to dispose of the property, correct?
That's correct. So all of our agreements have a set different milestones that are in
Right.
there. One of the first ones is if they don't start construction by a certain date, then we have the option of taking the property back. No harm, no foul. That would be before any kind of encumbrance was put on the property, if that's what they plan to do. And then the milestones after that would kick in as well once they've started construction all the way to a CO.
So before they get the property, you'll have a plan laid out.
Absolutely.
He can't go in there and put in like a horse barn or something.
Absolutely
He's got to fit. Okay. I just want to make sure that's clear that we're approving the disposition of that property to those individuals, but you're not going to do it until you have a full agreement.
That's absolutely correct. So
Okay.
the way that we've been instructed that the statute reads, we have to get approval for the disposition, and council's role is to determine whether the use of the property that we're wanting to dispose of it for, which is what I've described, is in the best use of the city. And once that box is checked, then we can continue to move forward with negotiation. Once we have the negotiations completed, there'll be a signed agreement like we've had for all of our other buildings. Same fashion, same, most of it's probably the same language, but just customized to those individual projects.
Thank you.
Sir?
Any other questions or comments?
So it's the same agreement too with the 5-year lease, or is this one different? Could you?
These
So that's
two,
what
I do not, I know for certain that the Bank of America building will be a transfer of ownership prior to the 5 years. I believe the Nancessory will be as well, because I think that he's going to be getting financing.
But you still have some sort of clawback mechanism up to a CO.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a monetary penalty that will be implied should they not complete the project, and we would still be a second on the mortgage as well.
Okay.
But we give up, if they encumber the property, they can't get lending. So we have to be willing to take the second seat, but we put a monetary penalty in there for that.
I have a hard time knowing that the first conversations with Ken were going to be tomorrow, but tonight we're approving the conceptual of and disposing the property.
So that's the way I understand is we're giving them permission to enter into an agreement with them.
That's correct. And if there's no agreement that's reached, then we would still retain the property.
And if you went back out to another RFP down the road,
We'd
you'd be back here
start
before
all
us
over.
again.
Yep.
Right. This is not a one time you can do what you want from here on out. It's
And
an
the
agreement to
Nancessory is
enter with Mr. LeBlanc.
That's right. And the Nancessory would be a great example, because I think this is my third time
Right.
being here for this one.
Right. Okay.
But if they don't perform, you can give extension.
Absolutely, yes. The board has the authority to move the milestones if they need to change them. And that's done on a case-by-case basis. It's something that we found keeps kind of the conversation going. It keeps that developer in contact with us and up to date. And every time we've done it, there's been a reason. One of the things that we have done in the more recent past is change that to every extension costs that person $500, and that covers our legal expenses for changing it and stuff like that. So we don't lose any money by making those extensions, and there is a little bit, albeit small, but for some of these folks, it's a, significant would be is too much of a word, but it's reason not to want to come back to us.
$500.
Correct. And it's an inconvenience to others, but it keeps us from having to foot the bill.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the disposition of the CRA owned property at
You already-
I already did.
Oh, you did?
at 139 North Ridgewood Drive to Ken LeBlanc as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Renee, could you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Furlough,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Ogleshead,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes. All right, we're going to now move on to item number 10E. I'm going to open this public hearing. This is another CRA property disposition for 231 South Ridgewood Drive. Take it away.
So this one will be the old Bank of America building. As I mentioned earlier, this one is for Marmor Construction. He'll house his administrative offices on the second floor, and the Hall of Fame Race Museum and Sebring Historical Society on the first floor.
No self-storage facilities. Right.
We were going to do a Dollar General, but
Because this is a public hearing, once again, I'm going to ask if there are any questions or comments from the audience on this disposition. All right, you guys are not very inquisitive tonight. I'm going to close that public hearing and open it up to council comments or questions. So again,
Same old story.
same thing. Do you have an idea on the incentive?
yes. So again, going back to the conversation we had with the attorneys, we're working on that part right now to make sure that it will fit. Historically, particularly in projects of this size, CRAs have been asked to come in and fill the gap. It's kind of the term they use, and that gap is typically somewhere in a 20% type range. Marmer has estimated his budget to be approximately $6 million, but he has not finalized it yet. So I believe that would be a high number that he's starting with. We talked specifically about the downstairs for the museum component, and he believes that he can do the demolition, abatement, and construction of that for in the neighborhood of about $1.2 million. The ask right now would come in somewhere right in that 20% range. So we're between, and we're not done yet, but I believe we will be somewhere between a 1.2 and a $1.4 million ask once we get there. The things that we are working on now is what is his final budget going to look like, and then what are those expenses going to include, and are we able to participate in them? The facade is one that we can participate in, and that is a fairly large expense for the overall project, and it's something that the CRA feels pretty strongly about is important. So we would want to, be able to do something with that. It also gives us the opportunity to have a say in what it's going to look like. We do have design review and stuff like that to go through, but we want to be able to have that conversation with what we're looking for. Some of the preliminary drawings that he's shown us, it changes that building dramatically.
So I'll say it as a comment. I initially had some heartburn on this one. One, when the CRA purchased it, and then with the idea of incentives on top of that. I feel better about that with the concept that it would facilitate the Hall of Fame Museum being in there for a long-term lease at essentially no rent.
Correct.
Right? That's the idea, the framework of what you're proposing.
Yes.
I feel a lot better about it from that standpoint. Still a big number, or the biggest number you guys have had to deal with. But it's probably the only way to get that museum in there, is what I'm imagining.
This will be our largest project that we've done. And I would also say it's probably next to getting the circle to where it is today, would be right up there as far as importance. I mean, everybody knows that we spent $1.3 million with HGTV. This is the gateway into Sebring, and no, it's not just for an office building for a private citizen. This is a tourist attraction that will help to kind of incentivize visitors to stay a little bit longer in the downtown area. One of the goals that we've been trying to work on is we have visitors now who are coming in more than we've had in the past. How do we keep them there for more than just lunch? Can we offer more stuff so that they are there for lunch, and maybe we can include dinner so that our restaurateurs downtown can get kind of a double whammy on that one? And we feel that having something on the scale of the Race Museum and the Historical Society in there to tell the story of what Sebring is, what it was, and where it came from, will help to do that.
Questions or comments from members of council?
And I agree with you, Josh, too. I mean, it's a large number. It's the biggest project that you've done, and I think just saying yes to a massive project like this says no to a lot more projects. But I feel like you're getting pretty close to. I mean, not many more buildings to buy.
Running out.
So large
We work on
number.
the other end of town.
We want to work on the power plant.
That's not on that's the gateway to Sebring. You have two gateways to Sebring.
I know. I'm just kidding you.
We're not talking about power. But the other end of town needs.
And we're getting there.
I move to approve the disposition of the CRA owned property at 231 South Bridgewood Drive to Marmer Construction as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Renee, can you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Turlock,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Ogletree,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Thank y'all very much. We appreciate it.
All right, we are going to now circle back to item number 10C, sports and recreation facilities evaluation and recommendations.
We expect this to be just as chipper as it was 6 hours ago.
Oh, you're excited to hear it again, Helen? We'll go. I moved this right. Hi, everyone. Casey Hart, Tourism Director for Highlands County, for the record. I was thinking as the meeting was going on, you guys teed this up so well for us. From Mayor Shoup's comments about the economic impact of our visitors, to Ms. Janice talking about helping the local kids to Mr. Haycock talking about sports and the history that Sebring has. So appreciate everyone teeing everything up for us. Scott, do you have is it the presentation loaded?
You know what? Let me pull the PowerPoint.
It's okay. I can start talking while you're doing that. So we're going to talk a little bit about sports tourism. Josh, sorry that you have to listen to this. Josh is a really great member of our TDC board, so we really value his input and feedback. So you already know all of this. A lot of people ask why sports tourism is such a buzzword. You know, we have art and culture, we have leisure travel, we have golf, we have all these things. Sports tourism specifically, when you look at tournaments or scheduled events, it can be very intentional. So the market for that, especially in Florida, is very tough. A lot of people want those events. So of course we're tourism development. We're not talking about bringing events here in January through March, right? Our hotels are full, our restaurants are full. We're talking about how do we bring events here in June? How do we bring events here in August or September? So that's what the presentation is going to be about. As Scott's bringing this up, I'm just going to keep talking from memory. So in 2024, 2025, the beginning of our fiscal year last October, we actually did circle back to 2023. So we did a recreation study looking at what tourists want and then what locals want as well. We heard a lot of feedback from people. Obviously, you know, they want the bowling alleys and they want the stuff with private investment. But we also saw we want a lot of things for families. We want better facilities for families. We want things to do with kids. So that got us to start looking at our local facilities. What could use an upgrade? What existing facilities do we have that could use an upgrade? On the county side, we're looking at the Highlands County Sports Complex, which is the one over by the high school. We're working down the path with that. We got a grant to purchase 43 more acres there to put more fields there. And then we're also going down the path of looking at an indoor facility. This would be about 100,000 square foot indoor facility. We have someone who has given us a letter of intent to donate some land for that. So with that, so just a reminder of what the TDC does. Thank you, Scott, for that. The TDC, obviously, we are a county department. We do not function with general revenue. We function with tourist development tax. So what that means is anyone who stays in a hotel, an Airbnb, or a short-term rental for less than 6 months is mandated to pay us 5% tax on that stay. So with that, we use a lot of research-based information. Jason is here. He's our numbers guy. He does a lot of research on how we spend the money. And that research can be data or it can be market analysis or different things like that. And when we did our strategic plan in 2019, a lot of the feedback that we got is that we raise a lot of great kids here in Highlands County, but they move away and they don't stay. They don't come back. So how can we combat that and make this a better place for people to live, improve the quality of life, so that kids want to come back. And then also we allocate resources to enhance the quality of life, to reduce seasonal employment. That's one thing that we heard. A lot of restaurants and hotels have that issue. And then to create a place for families to raise their children. And so that was a picture of a lacrosse event that we brought. So the tourism benefits for locals, I get a lot of people say, that's great, but what does this do for me? So you see a lot of economic benefits and impact from tourists. We have about 5,000 jobs in the county that are directly related to tourism. Tax revenue for public services. And then also the TDC has what we call our third penny or our asset development fund, where people can come and ask us for money for assets that we look to enhance. We also have an event grant program where we fund events to come here. So a lot of the events that Alan brings are funded by our event grant program. So I mentioned this earlier, sports tourism is a very powerful grower of economic development. I tell the story in June of this year. I went to Umatilla, Florida. Not somewhere I would go just to choose to go to Umatilla in June. But my son was playing in a travel ball tournament. So there I was in Umatilla, Florida, spending money at their restaurants and their hotels and everything else. So sports tourism does that. It's not just the game, but it's also everything that comes with the game and the team traveling and different things. You see families going in different places. Alan will tell you a lot of statistics on female events, because when girls travel, they bring more money than when just the boys like all pack into a room for a basketball tournament. And then for small destinations, it's a way to actually develop community pride. And we just saw that recently in Lake Placid, where we plugged an event in there kind of at the last minute. There was a lacrosse camp that wanted to come to the sports complex. Our sports complex was already booked. We moved it down to Lake Placid, kind of an unexpected surprise for them, and they loved it. The whole, all the elected officials came out. They were thanking the lacrosse people for being there, and it's developed a sense of pride where they had us come down this afternoon and do a presentation for them. So I won't go through all this, but again, the year-round visitation, again, we're looking at how do we get people here, specifically probably I would say May through October are our key months that we're looking for. We don't want to bring more people in March. We know everything's full. We see a lot of dual benefits with infrastructure, the infusion of money into the infrastructure. Not only does it bring the tourist events here when we have nice facilities, but it also creates really nice amenities for the people who live here as well. I won't, again, for the sake of time, and because this is the third time doing the presentation today, I'm not going to read it to you guys. I mentioned the 2023 recreation study. These are just some sample responses that we got. Click on the next slide. So from the 2023, we do a lot of studies, but then so after the studies, we're like, okay, now what? So a couple of things that came from the 2023 study is that a lot of people didn't know we had so many playgrounds. Surprise, like we as locals kind of thought everyone knew where the playgrounds were, but when you search something, when you search Avon Park playgrounds, only the Avon Park playgrounds come up. Or if you search Sebring, it's only Sebring. So it wasn't capturing Lake Placid, it wasn't capturing Sun and Lake, Spring Lake, those kind of things. So that was a really simple fix. We worked with the county PIO, and now we have one page that has all the playgrounds, and obviously there's a QR code. The other thing we saw is that how do we make these existing facilities better? That was one thing that people asked for, better facilities. So last fiscal year, the TDC developed a strategic planning grant for facilities to apply for. So in January, both the city of Sebring and the town of Lake Placid submitted grant applications asking for the TDC to help offset the cost of doing a strategic plan for facilities. Avon Park did not submit an application, so when we took it to TDC, Josh was there, the TDC felt that in order to capture everything and be the most comprehensive study for the county, we should include the city of Avon Park, and we should also include things like the fairgrounds that obviously did not submit a grant either. So what happened was instead of TDC offsetting the costs, TDC paid the entire $65,000 for the study so that we could include everything, all of these facilities within the county. The presentation was given to TDC on May 1st, and a full report, a written report, which you can find on the TDC's website, was provided on June 10th. So a lot of people are like, why is tourism evolved? Like, we have these community assets. I don't really understand. So the orange column is part of our statute. We're governed by a state statute and a county ordinance. So it does say in the statute that if we fund things like a facility, it has to show one of its main drivers is tourism. So in the strategic planning grant component that we did, we specifically were looking for facilities that already had some form of tourism. So Max Long already had Dixie Youth baseball tournaments, Fairgrounds already had cornhole. So what we're looking for is how do we enhance these facilities and make them even better. I mentioned our third penny asset. Those are things that we've been working on for things like the sports complex, things like the indoor facility that are county projects. But it begs the question of what else? What else could we do with that third penny? And then we did the study looking for opportunities for other facilities. And then the next step, this will really be up to the owners of those facilities. Like the fairgrounds, we've helped connect them with a grant company where they've applied for a $400,000 grant, and they've used data from our study to apply for that grant. So it just kind of depends on the owner of each property, what they want to do. So there were 3 study consultants, and you can see they came from all over the country. Huddle Up Group in Arizona, Synergy, which is Jason Boudry in Charlotte, and Airstream Ventures, many of you know Alan, he's based out of Jacksonville. And he is driving home tonight, so that's why I'm trying to talk fast. The Huddle Up Group is really the first sports tourism company we started working with back in 2020. They do a sports tourism index, and that was how we first entered into the space of doing an audit. So we wanted to know, how are we set up compared to other destinations to host sports tourism events? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Obviously, there's a weakness like we don't have an airport. There's really probably not much we can do about that. But some of the other things, what can we do? How can we combat that? At the time, we didn't have anybody marketing Highlands County as a sports tourism destination. So part of that initial audit was we linked up with Airstream Ventures, and they pretty much function as our sports commission. Next slide. Synergy Sports, that's Jason, and he'll talk in just a little bit. He is the data and the creative financing guy behind everything. Really helps us understand how we can make some of these projects that we maybe think of just a vision, that they could become a reality through some of his financing. And he provides consultation from the very beginning to the end of the project as well. And then Alan, most everybody knows Alan. He's been around for a while. He actually is the one that plugs the events in. So when you see lacrosse, when you see motosurf, when you see pro watercross, Spartan race, golf events, that's Alan going out recruiting these events and bringing them to Highlands County. So basically the overview of the study findings was, yes, there is opportunity in Highlands County to improve our sports tourism position. Number two, this could be done by a very strategic strategy on how we do that, which is a lot of the first step is how do we develop these facilities to be better facilities. And then three, we really heard from community leaders that expressed an interest and a desire for better facilities as well for the community. So this was the study process. Really recommend the existing facilities that could be better venues. Determine the level of renovations necessary, what needs to be done to make that a reality. Estimate the renovation or development costs, assess the level of economic impact, direct spending, TDT tax, hotel tax, all the things, and then advise TDC on fund usage for current and upcoming projects. So it started, we made a list of 37 venues that went back to the Sports Tourism Index that we felt like needed to be evaluated and looked at for their sports tourism value. And then the next slide, they pared it down to the top 12. In March, they came and did an on-site visit. And then they pared it down even further to the top 5 to do the deep dive, to do renderings, to do the economic analysis. And that's kind of where we landed with the May 1st presentation. So for the sake of this meeting, we'll just focus on Max Long. You guys don't have to hear about all the different other venues. And I will probably turn it over to you guys.
Hey everyone, Alan Verlander with Airstream Ventures. So as Casey said, we looked at Max Long. We looked at 5 facilities, but Max Long being in the city of Sebring, and realized that the bones of all of Max Long are really, really good. The footprint is very good. We started calling around to a bunch of different event rights holders. We work with about 90 across the country. And just said the ones that would apply, said if we were to do something like this, would you bring your event to Sebring? And they all, I'm not going to say all, but 98% unequivocally said absolutely, if you could build something like that. So basically, at Max Long, you have 8 fields there. You could make 8 200 fence fields. Our recommendation would be to turf all of it, not just the infield, but the entire thing. You see a lot of baseball fields now, even though that clay look is still turf. Portable mounds, all those kinds of things, because they're making it multi-purpose. And so, but you could fit 8 softball fields there. Well, now we've got 5 at the county complex. We bring about 14 travel softball events here a year. Not sure if anybody knows that, but there's a lot. They're capped out at 30 teams because of only 5 fields. You do something like this, now we become a hub for softball in not only the state of Florida, but the South, because people want to come to Florida, but they don't want to go to Orlando. They don't want to go to Tampa. They don't want to go to Atlanta. They don't, because you're faced with a lot of traffic. And the hotel costs are double what they are here normally. And so we would upgrade all of that. You could also have 5 300-foot fence baseball fields, which then you could do some really good travel baseball events as well. Obviously new netting, new scoreboard, but make it a first-class facility. I do want to give kudos to the current people that are managing. Max Long's come a long way since I've been here for 5 years, but it's still not to the point where we can host major travel events. The nice thing about this, as well as if you make it all turf, now it becomes a multi-purpose field. So you can play lacrosse on there, you can play soccer on there. YMCA could continue to do things. You could paint lines on there. There's water-based, chalk-based paint that dissipates on the first rain. So you could do a lot of different things. It becomes multi-purpose. So again, we've talked to a lot of these people that we work with. This is just a snippet of those. They all would like to bring bigger events here. We just don't have the capacity for them right now. So this is the current footprint. So what we would be doing, you can see the different ball fields. We would take the current soccer field that is there and turn that into parking. We understand that parking is a major need there. That's probably an understatement, but is a major need there. And so with making these current fields multi-purpose, you can play soccer on these fields. So from the YMCA standpoint, they're not going to lose what they have in Dimitri, and his team do a great job with that. And so you actually enhance what you have there now. And Jason is our numbers guy, so I'm going to turn that part over to him.
Thanks. Good to see all y'all. Jason Boudry with Synergy Sports. So our part of this, right, after we looked at the design, how, what tournament organizers and folks were looking for, then we were able to create an operating model based off of that. And then backwards math, number of teams per field, like Alan said. With the county complex, you're limited to, we usually use six teams per field to look at the capacity for a tournament. So 5 fields, the most you can get is 30 teams. Now, if you're adding another 8 out here, you can have standalone tournaments, but then you can also combine resources and have 13 fields between the two. And so we were able to calculate some of the tax impact, some of the economic impact, the direct spending by visitors from outside the region. And then that trickled down to what the county sales tax revenue numbers were, and then what the TDC revenue numbers were for hotel tax. And so of all of the 5 deep dives that we did, and then working up to the total number of facilities we looked at, renovating Max Long is probably the most impactful project within the county at this point. Because it's got such good bones, we're not throwing a hand grenade in it and blowing it up. It's just making what's out there better. And so by creating an environment where these national tournament organizers are willing to come, right now you're increasing your annual visitor count by another 90,000, increasing your hotel room night stays by another 70,000 nights. You can program this type of facility 40, 45 weekends per year. And so when you add that to what economic impact's already happening, it's very impactful. And so we were able to calculate all of this as well as those other 4 deep dives.
So as we're doing this, again, I mentioned, obviously TDC, we want more money, right? So we can invest back in our community. But there's a lot of community benefits that go along with a project like this. Obviously, we talked about parking and the fields become rentable. And what I mean by that is, and Josh knows, so at the sports complex, what we've done is the community use fee is one price. The tourism use fee is a different price. It's a higher price because they're coming to TDC and they're asking for event grants. We're giving them an event grant, which helps offset their facility fee. So essentially, TDC is paying their field rental. I'm not to say they don't care what they pay, but they're not as scared off by a higher number. So we've found that model works really well at the sports complex. So again, when you have these more rentable fields, it could be that the city could charge a higher amount for an outside tournament to come in versus what they charge community. I don't even know if you charge community, but anyway, I'm using that as a model. The other thing that we've talked about, we have a group, what we call our Max Long Stakeholder Group, which is YMCA, Sebring Youth Baseball, and the city. Scott's been a part of that. And I know traffic, especially on Hammock Road, has been an issue. What Jason explains is that part of their pre-development process would be a traffic study. So those are some of the things that we would look at as well. The other thing with Max Long, it's an ideal, central, family-oriented location. It's close to the hotels. I know a lot of people said, why can't you just do this at the sports complex? And we could, but we're never going to have a hotel near the sports complex. I mean, it's near train tracks, so I don't know if anybody wants to stay in a hotel next to the train tracks. But we're already near the hotels, and a lot of people, when they do these travel tournaments, they want to be close to the hotels. I mentioned the stakeholder meetings. Next slide. So, Jason, I don't know if you want to come back up. This is a comparative analysis that Jason was talking about of all the venues reviewed in the study.
So when we originally presented the renovation of Max Long, is it to TDC?
Yes.
Yes. To TDC, we had a cost estimate of around $8 million, $10 million. We went back to a couple of vendors and GCs and got a quote, a true quote, and it came back at 9.5. And that was for all turf fields, right? And so there is a different option if the city were to look at this and they said they only wanted grass in the outfield and turf on the infield. But as you can see, and we don't have to go through every number, given the pros and cons, cost and benefit, the relatively lower cost of Max Long compared to some of the others, and the benefit that is derived from it, again, tells us, Alan from the event side and me from the economic and financial side, that it's a really, again, it's impactful. It's a really good project. A couple of the things that we looked at to kind of explain some of these, especially the projected annual cost, and this gets a little bit ahead in the story, but Casey has adopted my saying that cities and counties do a lot of great things. Managing the event side of these sports complexes is not one of them, right? And so having not just Allen and Airstream to bring in events, but to put in a daily operator for the sports complex for Max Long is probably something to consider. And we can get into that if y'all want, but in turning Max Long from more of a community rec facility to a sports tourism facility, there's a much bigger strain on resources. And so by having an outside operator, that operator typically will quote unquote own the employees. And so you don't have 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 more employees coming on city payroll, benefits, retirement, that sort of thing. The management company will handle daily operations, coordinating with the YMCA, coordinating with the local travel or the local youth leagues, and then coordinating with Allen to bring in the tournaments and events, handling all the logistics, security, parking, gate, and whatnot that comes with kind of these travel ball facilities. And so that's what the management cost is. It's generally about 8 to 10% of gross revenue. The other number on there is what we call a lease cost, and that kind of gets into I think the next slide, if I remember right. So, and we don't have to go back, but with an $8 to $10 million cost, right, then the question that typically comes up is, well, okay, how are we going to pay for it, right? And so whether it's a big city or a small town or somewhere in between, the city may have $10 million that they want to put at it, but they probably don't. And so there are four main ways that these projects are typically funded. Historically, issuing bonds at the municipal level is one. Sometimes it's a tough sell for a sports asset versus a school or a park. It has to go through a referendum and voting process. So it's long, it takes a lot more money, a lot more resources. And typically cities don't want to use up their bond capacity if they don't have to, but it is an option. Capital improvement budget, same thing. Usually those funds don't materialize, other things take priority. Privately developed, privately funded is starting to fall out of favor. The cost of capital is very high, and generally it excludes the public. And so the analogy I give, or the example is, if I was a private developer and you guys put out an RFP and said, hey, we're looking for a developer to renovate Max Long. And I said, well, yeah, sign me up. And you say, I'll tell you what, we'll donate the land to you. You make the improvements, you own it, you operate it, and we want to use it for youth baseball. Okay, right? But if I'm a private company and, Josh wants to just come out and hit balls with his kid, if I can rent that to Mayor Shoot for $50, I'm going to do that every time, right? And so the public tends to be excluded from these completely private operations for free. And then even if I wasn't going to, rent it to somebody, I still may not want Josh on there because he's going to wear out my baseball fields. And so that model typically doesn't work with recreation and sports at the community level. And so there is a public-private partnership model that we've used with other groups in the past, other communities. We don't have a dog in the fight, but it's a pathway that a lot of communities are starting to use. And it essentially takes the form of a municipal lease. And so we can talk about that more if this concept is something that the city's interested in looking at. But the private side still comes in, they bring capital. It's at a fairly low rate, very similar to the city's bond rate. They bring the capital in to fund the development of the project and turn it into a lease back to the city. And so it's operated by an external operator. Any profits go back to the city. Any shortfalls is the responsibility of the city. And so it's no different than a lot of cities are familiar with this concept with public works, sometimes with ambulances and fire trucks where they lease them instead of buy them. There's no prepayment. And so it's just another avenue that you can look at where the city's not out a lot of capital at the beginning or throughout the process. And ideally, operating revenues will cover operating expenses plus the cost, which was referenced on that previous slide. That was the lease cost. And so, in an ideal world, we could renovate Max Long for $9.5 or $10 million. The city would come out of pocket very little to provide capital. The private side could come in and bring that capital, operating revenue, spending by tourism, spending by these event organizers, effectively pay that lease cost and pay those operating expenses for the city. Local youth still have a place to play Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when it's not being used by local youth leagues for games, is being programmed for tournaments through Airstream. That's the general concept of how this would work. And I can answer specific questions as we get through this. That says what I just said. That's more of what I just said. And so where we are now is we're essentially at the orange box. And so, we had this same presentation earlier, and then we had it this morning for the county for all of their specifically owned assets. The next steps in the process, if you guys said, yeah, we want to look at this, we have a pathway of how this works, but we would get into pre-construction. That's the only other place where the city would have any capital expense. Typically, capital expense is about 5% of the projected project cost is pre-construction. That is reimbursable to the city once the funding comes through on the financing agreement from one of these private side partners. And so it ends up being a float of capital or float of cash for about 6 months. That pre-construction period ends, we do a traffic study, we do all the engineering plans. Well, we don't. We have general contractors that we can call in to do this. Once pre-construction is done, the funding gets deployed, construction starts. For something like Max Long, it's probably a 12-month project. And so when you take pre-construction into account, it's probably 18 months start to finish. The way that Max Long is laid out, we wouldn't have to take the entire complex offline. We can cycle through. So while they're still using some fields are being renovated, and then we just move around clockwise or counterclockwise. So the city doesn't lose all of their fields at one time. And then, 18 months later, everything's ready. that gives Alan 18 months of runway to go out and secure some of these events. A lot of these tournament organizers, and Alan can speak to this, they're already contracted with other facilities for a year, 2 years, 3 years in advance. So this gives us some runway to say, hey, once you're done with this contract out here, we'd love for you to come over to Sebring. And so that's the nuts and bolts of that. The municipality continues to lead the project. We've got a bunch of partners and other firms that we work with that handle everything from the construction to the operations. We stay on, obviously, as a trusted advisor and a consultant to the city to help guide you guys through this process. And then we plug in the pieces where we need to. One of the nice things about this public-private process is that these are developed as private projects. And so it's not the municipality putting everything out to RFP and the procurement process. And so these projects can be built a lot less expensively, a lot more efficiently, and a lot faster than if the municipality was trying to undertake it itself. You guys can read through these. It's probably in your packet. These are just FAQs that we've come across or that have been asked of us over the past several years of doing this type of thing. The biggest one that usually comes up is on that first page about annual appropriations. And so the way these leases are structured, it takes into account non-appropriations. And so as a city council, whatever that lease expense is does have to be appropriated annually. And that's what classifies this as a lease rather than capital debt, right? And so it's not looked on as similar to a bond. It is looked on as a one-year lease with 29 renewals attached to it. The operator is responsible for daily operations, repairs, maintenance, staffing, and then who owns the facility? The bank owns it, right? Kind of like when you mortgage your house. So the bank owns it till you make the last payment, and then everything is titled over to the city. So these are a couple other projects Alan and I are working on together that are following the same process, the same framework. A big project in Texas, Flagler County, Palm Coast, is doing a very, very big project. They're at about $130, $150 million. They're putting all their eggs in the soccer field basket. They have a stadium and then an indoor facility. The next three in Georgia, Arkansas, and Texas are just indoor facilities. Out in Texas and Palestine, that's very similar to Max Long. They're renovating 7 fields out there, but it's almost exactly the same. And in Charlotte, where I live, there's an indoor sports complex with 3 soccer fields. So this is some of the funding. I don't know, Casey, if you wanted to start to talk about this a little bit. But the lease payment, management fee, the total, like I said, pre-development costs aren't any more than 10%. Typically, they hover around 5%. They're reimbursed. We can look at fully turfing the facility. We can look at just turfing the infield as kind of the next step. And so with that, we can, I'll answer any questions. Whatever you guys want.
Yeah, just because it was. Can we go back to that last slide real quick? The estimated annual management fee, that's $450. I thought one of the slides said $150.
Yeah.
Wait, is it? Okay.
So we'll start with questions and comments from council, then we'll open it up to the public. So.
Go ahead, Harrison.
Oh, I got it.
Write stuff down feverishly.
Talk
over here.
numbers. What have you been seeing for the return on investment for a lot of these that you've been working with? Is there a ballpark?
So, not to take this the wrong way, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't matter. Because the city's paying an interest payment, basically.
Mhm.
So as long as you don't lose money, you're good. Ideally, you would want to make money.
Mhm.
But this isn't a private equity deal, right? This isn't a private investor group or a private equity group saying, well, here's $10 million. We want 18% ROI, right? This is a group that's coming in offering to finance a project with the city's backing, right? So there's safety and security in the from a financing side. And that annual lease payment includes the return to the private side in it, right? And that return is 3 or 4%.
So I guess I'm just looking at it too. I mean, the city's paying what between 500,000 and 600,000 to fund Max Long every year. We go with this route too. Then what's the liability shifting, or the city's not coming up cost anymore? Even if the first couple of years doesn't have that return, there is a shortfall that we would take, but it's probably going to be, I would imagine,
You're
be
going to
under
net positive.
net positive.
For sure. And we had the same conversation with Lake Placid this afternoon, right? They're spending $350,000, $400,000 on the sports complex out there. If they renovated it, that would almost fully cover what their lease expense is, and all of the daily management, the daily upkeep is transferred over to the operator.
So you talked about maybe 40 weekends a year for programming for a tourism side. What sort of typical facility fee rental do you think this would net at the end of that?
So when we did our modeling, and we try to be conservative on our modeling on the P&L side, we didn't include the P&L on here, but I can get it to you. We modeled it based on current rental rates plus a very small premium, because you're getting a premium facility, right?
Turf and 8 fields.
Turf and 8 fields and new LED lights and whatever, right? So if the current rental rate is $30 an hour, we didn't model it at 300 just to make the numbers work, right? So we would model it at $50, right? And if you still want $30, then we've got the county complex that's got dirt fields.
So going back to what Casey said, with all these events coming in, they get grants. You hear them all the time, and so a lot of those grants, the event rights holder would come in and ask for a grant for the rental that would go back to that. So we took a snippet and the average across the board in the state of Florida, in smaller communities, not what you have in Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville, whatever, but comparable communities, very similar to what we have at the sports complex here. So if you rent all of the fields, the entire sports complex for the weekend, you're going to pay about 10 grand. If you're an outside event, if you're a local, you pay about a third of that. So in essence, the TDC helps funds that as well. So you can look over the span of 35, 40 weekends a year, you're starting to get to that $500,000 number. That's not including the other thing that Jason, a lot of these facilities have naming rights to them. So you could call it the XYZ Max Long field. Each field could have a naming rights partner. So a lot of these complexes around the country are also raising annual funds for naming rights of certain things. That all goes to help pay for that annual number.
You mentioned if you're from out of town, it's set amount of dollars, and if you're from in town, it's a different amount. With that, are you speaking about Sebring Youth Baseball when you say in town? Like, how would they be affected
Correct.
here?
Or however that is set up. So I mean, you could set it up to where, again, the community owns it, and the operator is working with the community to set that funding mechanism. So I think what we would do is you'd have to back your way into. The key is, how do we make the 720? Really, it'd be nice how you make 800, so you're pocketing some, right? But how do you make that 720 and you back your way into that based on your fees and everything like that? And then you have to determine, can you get there, which we believe you can just with tourism stuff, to where then do you want, because you have this unbelievable facility now, what do you want to do with local? And that's really a local decision. That's not a decision for us to make.
So we would set effectively the local use days and fees and make that agreement with the operator, so they know these are the parameters you're working.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
There's always two levers, and I think I've explained this to TDC, right? There's a community use lever, and there's a sports tourism revenue lever, and they move in opposite directions, right? So you as a city could say, hey, you know what? we're going to spend this $9.5 million, and we don't want any tournaments. Okay, well, that's community use all the way up and revenue all the way down. Or you can do the opposite and say, we don't want any community use. We want all tournaments and all revenue. And that goes in the other direction. And then you got a lot of mad people in town. And so the balance is somewhere in between. And so based on the financial modeling, we can tweak that model to say a little bit more here or a little bit less here to make the numbers work and to give enough community access.
What's the life expectancy of the turf?
So the best turf that's out there is a product called Pivot Turf. It carries a 15-year warranty, I believe, with a life expectancy of closer to 20 years. So you would go through one full replacement cycle, but that's built into the P&L.
And the ongoing maintenance of the turf is included in that
Correct.
figure?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is a misconception. You turf a field, all your maintenance goes away. You don't have to do. That's not true. You still got to broom it. You got to sweep it, but it's nothing compared to what you're doing now.
And the increased playability on turf versus dirt, right? The reason these tournaments get rained out or tournament organizers don't want to come if you have dirt fields is because there's a chance it could get rained out, right? With turf, and anybody that has kids that travel ball, you know, it could rain at 9 in the morning and they're playing at 11. And so you have this almost guaranteed playability with these turf fields that increases that number of weekends from 25, 26, 28 to 35 or 40 because it's better for these tournament organizers.
Have you found sports tourism to be recession resistant?
COVID resistant.
It's COVID resistant. I mean, during COVID, those of you that have young kids, I know with we're still going everywhere. You know, took off for about a couple months trying to figure out what happened, and then our state especially got right back in it.
Okay. I guess that if we're looking at a 30-year life cycle of this, I just wonder, is there macroeconomic trends that we should be aware of or not? I'm assuming that with kids, with youth sports, it's less so.
Especially outdoor stuff. Indoor may be a tinge more of a risk because it's indoor, but with outdoor stuff, everybody wants to be outdoors, right? So,
you know, I think as we presented this to Lake Placid earlier and then to the county this morning, I think, Josh, the risk that there is if we're back up here a year from now, recommending the same thing, or 3 years from now, another community will do. They will put together an all-turf, nice facility, right? You don't have to have the most fields to be the best. You have to have the best fields to be the best. And that's what Max Long can be, right? It's not going to, you know, near where I live is Lake Point, outside of Atlanta, right? And they've got 35 diamonds or some ungodly number. Up in Ohio, Berliner Sports Complex has got 50 diamonds. That's never going to be up. But to have all turf fields, to have great amenities, have good lights and wide concourses and safety netting, all the things, that's where the opportunity is. And, you know, again, if we're here in 2 or 3 years recommending the same thing, another smaller community will beat Sebring to the punch. And then you start cannibalizing each other at that point.
The 9.5 number includes netting, lights, concession,
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
Do you have any idea how much just a turf replacement is
About $300,000
for the whole facility?
once it's done. Yeah, like in that 15-year mark.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it's 300 now, it'll be 750. Okay.
But typically we model at least 10% of 10% of revenue will go back into kind of a repair and replacement account. And so again, ideally by the time you get to that 10, 12, 15-year mark, you're not going to replace all the turf at one time. You're going to start and kind of work your way through. And so it's not going to be $4 million all at one time. It's going to be $350,000 1 year, times 4 fields 1 year, and 2 fields next year, 2 fields.
Got it.
So if you take a look at the capacity of Highlands County? You've been to Lake Placid, okay, you've been to the county here. Is there,
Different recommendations, right? Because each of those communities, right, you guys have a different asset than the county. And Lake June Sports Complex is a different set of assets than the city, right? And so for the county, Alan can speak to this. I mean, the county, the concept is to, well, in case purchase additional land behind the county sports complex and then develop flat fields and add a couple more diamonds to the softball complex, right? And so you can collaborate, right? You can do your own thing, right? Alan gave this great analogy earlier, right? You can now have 7 fields over there, 8 fields at Max Long, and 4 fields at Lake June. They can each do their own things, but then you can come together where you need to and put the 8, 9, and 10-year-olds over here, and the 11 and 12-year-olds here, and the older kids over here. Now the big organizers are really, really interested when you have, you know, a total inventory of 15, 18 fields.
Now, the only downside, and I haven't said this all day, don't shoot. The only downside is we don't have currently enough hotel rooms to service, and quality hotel rooms to service these massive events that Jason described. You go to 4 different complexes and do all of this, but by the time all of these get built, developers see what's going on, those kinds of things happen. But when we have the Spartan race here, you know, and they bring 13,000 people into the area, people are staying all over the place. Airbnbs are full, hotels are full. When we bring the big lacrosse event in, everything's full, people are staying in. So that's the only downside. Right now, currently, we don't have enough hotels to service what Jason just described. We have plenty of hotels to service this, but when we're talking about 30 fields in different pockets, right now that's our downside. But it's coming.
Just Max Long, what would be the number of people impacting Sebring at an event?
I think there was a slide earlier.
I don't remember.
It was like 90,000.
90,000 per year.
Right.
But any one event, do you have any?
Well, you can do the backwards math, right?
Right.
So we use a benchmark number of six teams per field
Okay.
per tournament, right? So with 8 fields, 48 teams, 12 to 15 players on a team, 2.5
Parents and
visitors,
siblings.
right? You know, you can round that up to 3. They're going to stay on average 3 days, 2 nights. You throw in some week-long tournaments in the summertime, and you can see how that exponentially starts to go up, even when you don't include the county sports complex or Lake June.
Right.
Okay.
So on an operator model, you mentioned part of the reason is, you know, municipalities and governments suck at marketing, and, you know,
You said that.
it's true. It's a different mission, right? Is an operator typically incentivized on their pay package to bring in their own events? Like, is it like a commission structure? I mean, I'm just asking, is that typical with an operator?
Yes. Yes is the short answer.
Okay.
But I'll caveat that with, you know, it's all part of the operating agreement, right? Because if you constrain an operator by saying we want X number of weekends for youth, you're going to cap what their potential is.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
typically they're going to operate on a 6 to 8%, 10% of gross revenue is their management fee. But a lot of times they're incentivized if they generate profit above their projections, right? So if they say, hey, you guys are going to profit by $100,000 next year, and you make $500,000 without any loss of community use time, then there's probably some trigger in there
Okay.
that they get 25% or something of a bonus.
Cool. Okay.
You like paying bonuses to them? I mean,
That would be great.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
One more comment that I'll wait till everyone else speaks or public.
Okay, we'll open it up to public hearing, or to public comments. Go ahead. Yep, come on up. And reminder to please state your name for the record.
Stakeholder Jim Black. Historic Harder Hall Hotel and formerly Golf Resort. Wanted to thank Fred Tucker and Max Long staff for really kicking things up in the past couple of years. And Jason, Alan, and Casey for a wonderful presentation. I see only one fly in the ointment, and that has to do with the parking lot on Max Lawn. As you know, my son and wife won their second historic prize in St. Pete recently. They spent roughly $100 a square foot for abatement of drainage by having to go with underground vaults. We already know that there's a bad drainage problem, Max Long Golf Course, flooding of the neighborhoods. And the water goes to the two lakes. I'm wondering if this has been a consideration and how we can mitigate that problem.
Yeah, no, I'll take that. So I appreciate the question. I think that's good. I think that is certainly a concern. What we were tasked with this part of the study is to show the different municipalities where their opportunities lie with enhancing sports tourism, right? And so conceptually, if city council is in support of this idea, then I think to your point, we go to the next step and we have a process for doing that of what does that environmental survey look like? What does a water retention plan look like? What does drainage look like? We weren't tasked with doing that to this level at this point, but I completely agree. Those types of things in general would be studied as part of this pre-construction period and next phase of due diligence.
Other public comments? Come on up.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Council, thanks for seeing me. For the record, Chris Hutchins, a resident in Sebring. And thank you for your presentation. I'm excited about what can happen in Maxwell. I have a personal concern around this project. You may or may not be aware that there is a disc golf course at the Maxwell Recreational Complex. The image there showed a parking lot basically going over part of the course. And we recognize that, disc golf is not anywhere near as huge as baseball, but it is a growing sport. Baseball has been relatively flat as far as growth, where disc golf is growing 12% year over year, in particular in the youth sector. It can be a wonderful investment into the community, and we are about to have our 10-year anniversary on January 25th next year of this disc golf course. And I believe it has cost the city nothing. And it has not generated any injuries, no problems. The utilization of the park itself has deterred undesirable activities. So I believe disc golf has a place in the community, and I'd like to see some consideration for that disc golf course. And then I have one question in particular about the project. You mentioned that if we don't do this project, some other community may. Do you know if there is a community that is in this general region that is already working on a similar project?
There's a lot of conversations like we're doing, but nobody
it's further along the ground. It's such a tremendous investment. It's a little bit daunting to think that another facility could pop up and kind of steal our thunder. So I think that's something we really need to look at moving forward. That's all I have for now. So thank you for seeing me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason and Alan, I imagine, again, this is just a broad conceptual plan. If we wanted to incorporate disc golf, there probably would be a way to do that once we get into the weeds.
Yeah, we explained this to Lake Placid too. You know, the rendering, the site plan that we showed is it's beyond.
Do you mind coming up to
30,000.
the mic for the recording?
Yeah. Sorry. As we explained to Lake Placid, the site plan, the rendering that we showed is beyond 30,000 foot. I mean, it's 50,000 foot. So it's not going to show things that we may ultimately include, especially after talking to the community, talking to the YMCA. You know, things like, you know, it didn't show the lights, but there's going to be lights there. It didn't show a playground, but there will be playgrounds. It didn't show a lot of those things. A lot of the other things that, from a community amenity standpoint, are things like walking trails and, you know, what we're talking about, fitness stations and different age-appropriate playgrounds in different spaces. Some communities have put in splash pads or spray parks, right, for when it's hot out. Shade structures over top of the bleachers. You're not going to get that level of detail, right? We just wanted to kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and say, broad brush, this is kind of what we're suggesting.
Any other questions or comments from the public on this?
Yep, Sebring Youth Baseball. I don't know if they have any input, or the YMCA.
If you do,
Dan, you have. I know your associate doesn't have much speaking ability there, but you have nothing to add. Okay.
Anything else from council?
Dimitri, I think, wants to.
Oh.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. For the record, Dimitri Bosan, interim CEO of the YMCA. Casey and I and Alan, we've been discussing about this project for the past 2 months, I want to say, more or less. I think there's a big profit making this kind of course, complex over there. Definitely could bring the level of what we're trying to do for the city in the sports. Of course, like Alan said, it's like this is just the start. So it's for us, technically the way it is right now, it looks pretty good, as long as it doesn't affect again what the YMCA is all about, which is helping the communities. And again, one of the biggest things that we have in our communities is sports right now. The YMCA technically hosts soccer, flag football, and basketball. Soccer is the biggest one. We have around 600 kids every season. And we have around, now I added another season, so now we have 3 seasons of soccer. So definitely the way the project is, as long as it includes everything regarding everything that the YMCA provides to the community, is good with us. That's what I have to say.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything from council?
Yeah, just one last comment. I don't know if this is premature, but I mean, I love the idea conceptually too. The only thing I would ask, or I'm more curious about too, is just the relationship that we would have with the county. I mean, I wouldn't want to see us necessarily compete if they have an interest in the facility by the high school, and if we're going to do a similar concept too. So I don't know wherever their interest is. I don't know if it's worth a meeting or a workshop too, to see the potential relationship and dynamic of if the city does it or the county does it, and the best way that we can put our resources together to figure out what's best for the county and the city as a whole.
You want to make sure we're not cannibalizing each other.
Exactly.
Okay.
What, I mean, where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What are you expecting from us?
Yeah, so basically, we see these as a complement. We don't think they're going to cannibalize. We're not going to have to make a decision whether you use one or the other. I think they complement each other and allow us to host bigger events. At the county sports complex, we're talking more just about flat fields. So not ball fields or anything like that. So it would be more primarily soccer's, lacrosse's. Max Long You could do a lot of those, but they would enhance each other to allow bigger events to come to the city and the county.
So what would be our next steps if we were interested in moving forward?
Yeah, so like we explained to Lake Placid, I think this isn't a voting item or anything, but you guys certainly talk amongst yourselves. I can send some stuff through Casey to whoever the right person is, but we'll want to do a deeper dive before we get into true pre-construction. There's some financial CFO type of questions. There'll be some legal questions before we get into bringing bulldozers and stuff like that. So there's a little bit more of a data analytic piece that will be more detailed that we could bring back to council and can outline the pathway. At this point, you guys are going to need to vote on something. At this point, you're going to need to vote on something if that works for y'all.
I'll just add, so the $65,000 study got us this. So we're at 50,000 feet, and then we would need to drill down. So we had a level of interest from Lake Placid today as well. So I'm not sure what that looks like to continue engaging with Jason Services as a consultant. If TDC pays for all that, or if the municipalities cost share with TDC, I'm not sure what that would look like. But I think that would be.
You just need our direction on if we want to go next.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to give some kind of direction. I mean, we see, oh yeah, it looks great, and then 12 months later, it's stale, right? So if we like it, what is the next step?
So I'll say I like it. Right now we spend a lot of money on that complex, right? And it does serve the community. That's the whole point of it. If we can spend, even if we don't break even, if we spend less money or the same money and we have a significantly better complex, that's a win. I'm in favor.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a neat concept. I think probably what would help, and I'd help, and I know it'd help this guy next to me, but Jason, you said you have like a pro forma. This kind of explains the financial side of it to where, you can say, we're gonna do this lease for $720 and you're gonna get maybe a profit, but if you don't, what's gonna happen? But I think you've got it kind of mapped out already. We talked before.
Yes.
That if you could provide that to city council also, I think it'll kind of give a better pathway. It's a great concept, but to really grasp what it's going to cost, and that's what we're going with now with, Max Long with the golf course with several other items, is how do we do it? And then when DeSantis does away with ad valorem tax, and we have a bigger issue. So we need bigger tournaments. So, but if you can provide, kind of your general pro forma that you had that, shows expenses and kind of, and I don't know how deep it goes, but outline how the management process is involved in that. If you got that angle, I think that would help.
Yeah, we've
give
got it
everybody
broken
some
down to
insight.
number of tournaments and
Okay.
how much for parking and how much for gate fees and all of that stuff. So,
Okay.
it might warrant a Zoom call and walk through the whole worksheet. But yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, if we can provide it, we can look at it and then, arrange another call.
Yeah.
Is the consensus?
Yeah.
Everyone's interested in moving forward.
All right, we'll get some stuff over to y'all.
Okay. Awesome.
The
Thank
only
you so
other
much.
thing is, just Jason, Alan, Casey. I mean, this has been in the works a long time. I know all the work and the time and effort you put into it. Thank you a lot. It means a lot.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Okay. We are going to move on to item number 10F. Chief Oakland, you're up.
Mayor, council, and staff, good evening. Chief Hope for the record. I'd first and foremost like to thank you for putting me immediately after the professional marketing team to present a multi-million-dollar concept. Nothing like lowering the bar. For you this evening, you have item 10F, a review of the current pay plan for the police department. As you're obviously familiar, the city of Sebring passed a 4% COLA this year, which was a very gracious gesture in the world of CPIs and the actual cost of living that we have. Unfortunately for us, our closest competitor, the Highlands County Sheriff's Office, passed a 10% raise in their step plan and all their associated personnel. That has created quite the disparity between our starting pay and, of course, associated steps in our pay plan. Respectively, it's about $3,385 per year to start at 6.51%. We have a number of options available. First and foremost, we can do nothing. My fear if we do nothing, obviously, is that we will suffer considerable challenges with recruiting, certainly with retention moving forward. With that, I've asked Finance to come up with some options. They are included in the AIS that's been provided. Looking at perhaps meeting in the middle, increasing starting pay to $54,000, $54,500, and a close step at $55,000. The associated costs for each one of those are there, and the cost differences between our starting pay and the sheriff's office's current starting pay would be there as well. An associated thought with this is this year in the budget development process, we also did a decompressing raise for the lieutenants and police commander because the police steps had increased. This does not take that into consideration. However, with the vacancies we currently have, I think I can absorb that with no problem if council decides to do something and not have an increased cost to what's been presented for you. We'll answer any questions you may have, and certainly hope you have some thoughts and insight. Carl, I had just a question on this attachment A as far as the salary differences with the sergeants. You have 0 for FRS. Is that because you're paying him $408,000 a year and that's part of his retirement? Or? It's just an associated benefit, yes. My immediate thought is that all of the people that are sergeants are in the defined benefit pension plan, not in FRS, but I would have to rely on Jared for exact clarification with that. That is correct. Okay. But the $400,000 thing did sound good, man. That's for one guy or lady? Yes.
So, no, you were looking at me. You ready for me to start? So whenever Carl, he called to get my opinion on this, just like I'm sure he did everybody else. And it's my understanding that the sheriff's department move was in response to a neighboring county's move, and they did not match that. Our county did not match theirs, and I kind of had the thought that maybe we should not match the county. And what I don't want to happen is us getting this continuing bidding war to where we don't have the budget to compete with the sheriff's department.
Right. And
we get to a point where we say, heck, we might as well just close our police department and go with the sheriff's department like Avon Park did. And that's what I don't want to see happen.
I don't either. I do think there's a balance somewhere, right? Because we have to be competitive.
Because if we try to keep up with them, they're gonna put us out of business.
So is your concept to not do a raise at all?
No,
Or
no. The
to do
54th, the
to do the
54th.
lower
Yeah.
raise. I think that's an appropriate middle ground. I mean, we gotta be close, right?
Right. For $100 and something dollars a month.
Right.
Which one are you talking about?
54,000, the lowest.
At a cost of 150,000.
Yeah.
Per year. I'm okay with that. I see your point and I agree. I don't think we're ever, unless something dramatically changes in our favor in budgeting, going to be able to compete with a much larger department.
Right.
And so what you're saying is it's really Grady Judd's fault that it all flows down from
I didn't even name the county. I just said a neighboring county.
my supposition I made.
So I will share that the jurisdictions throughout the state are getting creative, and that is that if they don't increase starting pay, they offer an incredible hiring bonus or sign-on bonus, and that was a combination of what happened to our north. For 49 deputies, they increased their starting salary for all personnel, and they offered a $20,000 hiring bonus.
But this is one of the fastest growing counties in the whole country.
Right.
Right.
Plus one of the biggest counties.
Correct.
Well, and that was partly in response to a surge in hiring from immigration and naturalization who came and stole deputies.
Who had $50,000 signing bonuses. Right. Okay. I mean, I'm on board with.
How do you feel about that, Carl?
You know, Obviously, my wish would be that we're as close as possible. I do agree there has to be some degree of compromise. There could be some degree of compromise where we get close enough, if there is such a thing. As I shared, I believe, with each of you, if somebody's willing to leave the department over roughly $100 a month or $115 a month, there's more to it than that. Now, I will say in some instances there is more to it than that. There's a $5,000 hiring bonus that goes with it. So the first year out of the gate, there is a much greater cost difference for them. The sheriff's office has recently leveled the playing field. They will now bring our officers in at their step 10. Previously, they limited it to step 6. So they are enticing officers to go to their agency. I have one in background with them right now. It's a 9-year corporal, been with us for 9 years. He has applied and is going through background with him, and I recently lost one to Polk County for that $20,000 hiring bonus. Truthfully, I think what's good enough will truly come down to each officer that might be looking to go or chasing money. The portability of FRS has certainly created a problem for us. But if I had a first choice, obviously it would be $55,000. If I had a second, it would be $54,500, and you can guess what my third choice would be. And I do want you to know, we understand. I've worked with Sergeant Lowe, the union representative for our agency. I've worked with staff. We absolutely understand the costs associated with this and the difficulty coming back to you after we just completed budget and say, hey, we want more money. I think this is certainly a need ask, not a want ask, and we don't take it away.
I do agree with you all. I don't like it. I don't like it how it's feel like a zero-sum game that we're all competing against each other, and neighbor up north is competing to the guys on the coast, and it's harder for us. But I feel like the doing nothing is not the right answer, and we want to make sure that the best we can know that you and the team are appreciated and valued. And I would wish, I mean, if we could just have unlimited dollars to compete at that high level. It's just not there.
Any other questions or comments from council?
I would have went for the 54.5 being that.
Anything from the public on this one? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll meet in the middle. I move to approve the implementation of the new starting salary of $54,500.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Renee, can you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Kugelshat,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Thank
Sir.
you so much.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, moving on to item number 13A, City Manager Project Report.
Good evening, council. Before I get your,
That we had none.
sorry. So, before I get your guidance on the RFP for the Sebring Municipal Golf Course, does anybody have any questions on any of the other bullet points?
What's our timeline on the RFP for the Women's Club?
So, the Women's Club RFP might be, I've gotten some inquiries about whether or not, or maybe some, not inquiries, but some requests that, we finish the municipal golf course RFP first before we get into the Women's Club RFP.
Okay, so after the
Yeah,
municipal is the short answer.
because some of the applicants that might apply for the RFP for the Women's Club might also be applying for the RFP for the municipal golf course.
Okay.
Okay. Makes sense. So, Jamie, along with Bob Swain, Fred, Penny, have been working diligently on the RFP for the municipal golf course. It is very near to being ready for publishing, but I'm looking for guidance from council on whether or not you want it as a lease sale. So we put it out as a, either or lease and sale, if you will. Obviously, doing that opens it up to probably more applications, if you will, if you do both.
So,
Lease and sale, or lease and or sale.
my opinion, I feel very strongly it should be a lease, a long-term lease only, because I think that's the only way for us to control development of it. According to Bob, if it's a sale, no matter what we do after 21 years, it could be developed into something totally outside our control.
I agree. Should be a lease.
I agree with you both, and I think just go with the original intent that it stays with ownership within the city. So I would not be in favor for anything other than a lease.
I think either or, only because if we get a good value, good cost on it, we could look at a sale. So I'm on either or.
I'd go with either or too, Rebecca. If you can open up, if you're gonna do an RP, might as well open up to everybody.
I don't think we
21
have the
years, the
right
yard
to
won't be here,
sell
so.
property that belongs to the citizens of Sebring. We hear a lot of comments, and a lot of them are county people, not city people. And I just don't think we should sell a piece of property that belongs to the citizens of Sebring.
You wanna keep
I'll
a
go
losing
for a-
asset for the rest of your life.
Huh?
You wanna keep a losing asset for the rest of cut off somebody that may cause it to be a losing asset.
It may not be a losing asset later.
I don't know. I view it's 135 acres that we'll never get back. I mean, if we ever, or the city, I might not be here for that long, right? But it's an asset that we will never be able to replace. Is my concern.
And the price to replace that for 123 acres, if we're going to try to buy that somewhere else,
Right.
if it even exists for that kind of acreage right now within the city.
Right. So
I hold the opinion to allow both options in whatever the applicant wants to include in their proposal. That's up to them, and that will help us decide
I mean,
who we move forward with.
I guess. I mean, I won't vote for anything that's a sale if it comes down to that.
I won't either.
I think you give an option though out there to see what's out there.
Okay.
You don't have to vote
And
on it,
then
you
somebody
just
may
gotta
come
see.
in with a hell of a deal.
So what I'm hearing is we open it up fully, and you'll make your decision later.
I mean, I disagree. I mean, I just feel really strongly. This is probably one of the most strong things I felt about being on council is not letting this piece of property go.
I mean, I agree. Like, unequivocally, I don't care if someone offered us $10 million. I would have sell it.
I agree.
No one's gonna offer us that anyway. But you get the point I'm getting at.
And you could develop Max Long and make more money.
Okay.
Well, Scott, I mean,
Is that clear as mud?
Yeah, so direction is
Lease, because there's
Maybe we'll put in there's a preference for a lease. How about that? If there's no chance you're selling it, don't advertise it for a sale.
Well, you have three council members right now who are saying that they will
Right. It's not on the table.
vote for a sale. It does feel like a waste of time to be put in the RFP that you can enter in as a sale. I mean, opinions can change, but
You'll never know what's out there unless you ask. And that would include asking for both.
had a 3-2 vote though for a lease.
There was
You didn't vote.
There's the vote.
Well, let's vote.
Well, if we want to vote,
Conversation.
Consent.
well, you need a motion. Then
probably should get a motion.
I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we put the RFP out as a lease only.
and I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Call the roll, please. Oh, sorry. Wait.
That's okay.
Because this is a motion, we need to allow for public comment. So, sorry. Any public comment on this motion? Okay.
Bishop,
No.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Kugelshatz,
No.
Stewart.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Last but not least, item number 14A.
Present the bills for payment.
So moved.
Seriously.
Where you at?
I actually vote on it today, so I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Call roll, please.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Ogleshatz.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Before you adjourn, what is the time frame? Golf course starting.
As soon as we're completed. Shortly.
It could be published as early as this Friday.
We made our position clear that
I heard your position at the last meeting. Yes, sir.
we needed extended time.
This meeting is adjourned, but we can talk later.